Vamos aproveitar o intervalo do seu podcast para falar sobre K-pop. Preciso contar uma coisa para vocês.
Que você faz dancinha no TikTok? Ah, isso não vai me surpreender.
Mas o menu exclusivo do Mac com personagens do BT21 vai. Tem o novo Mac Crispy Chicken Cajun, molho Sweet Chili e Cajun e os personagens BT21 para você levar para casa.
Opa, depois do programa eu vou lá no app pedir, porque eu vi que os combos estão com frete grátis, né?
Clica aí no banner e pede agora mesmo. É por tempo limitado. Vai!
Aproveitando o break do seu podcast para perguntar: será que você sabe...
Quem é ele, esse tal de rock and roll?
Trident apresenta um feat de gerações com Rita Lee e Luísa Sonza.
Eu procuro estar por dentro, doutor, dessa nova geração. Mas minha filha não me leva a sério, doutor. Ela fica cheia de mistério com esse tal de rock and roll.
Quando terminar seu podcast, já aproveita para ouvir esse feat aqui no Spotify. Trident no Rock in Rio 40 anos. Masca e destrava seu rock and roll.
Hello and welcome to The Shift, the podcast that aims to tell the no-holds-barred truth about being a woman post-40. Created and hosted by me, writer and broadcaster Sam Baker. My guest today is the award-winning broadcaster Aasmah Mir. Born and brought up in Glasgow of Pakistani heritage, Aasmah started in newspapers before moving to the BBC, where she worked for 20 years, most famously as co-host of Saturday Live. She joined Times Radio 3 years ago, where she co-hosts The Breakfast Show, and is a two-time winner of a Sony Gold Award. It's kind of like a radio Oscar. She's also been named Audio Presenter of the Year at the Broadcasting Press Guild Awards, and she won Celebrity Mastermind. We're talking Brainiac. But before all this, Aasmah was a teenage loner, the third of 4 children, growing up between 2 cultures in the 70s and 80s. A childhood that could not have been more different than her mother, Almas, growing up in the 1950s in Pakistan. It is those 2 childhoods that are the subject of Aasmah's moving memoir, A Pebble in the Throat, which interweaves her childhood and teenage years with those of her mother.
It gets worse, Sam. He went up to me and he put his hand in front of my face, so horizontal, and then ticked it along round my face. Tick,
Oh my
tick,
God.
Tick, 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 tick,
How
tick.
did you not hit him?
At that point, I was just like, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to go over and talk to someone over there because that's just like not cool.
On a trip to Scotland, Aasmah came and hung out in my kitchen to discuss writing a book with her mother, how the racism of her childhood shaped her, learning to be visible, deciding to enter marriage, and rebuilding life after divorce. We also discussed her unexpected daughter, menopause, her monster to-do list, and how she finally dislodged the pebble in her own throat. Do you get up about 3?
I get up at 10 past 3. Yes, 10 past 3. And yeah, I know, but I'm kind of used to it now. It's been 3 years now and I think you get used to it. But, you know, the older you get, I don't think this is a young person's game really. And also going through like perimenopause or whatever it is I'm going through, I don't even know. It just really hits you hard. So you have to have a structure, you know, you have to have a routine and don't deviate from it. And that tends to work.
So did you basically have that everything happening at once? You accepted this big new job, you left the BBC after 20 years, you ended your marriage, and you had perimenopause at the same time, or did that come like a little bit later?
A little bit later. So left the BBC and joined Times Radio in 2020, just kind of the time of the pandemic starting. So that was weird. So the new job was delayed because of the pandemic. I think it was supposed to start in March and it ended up starting in June or the end of June. And then I had 1 year of kind of normality where the only thing I really had to worry about was getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And then a year into it, I got a book deal, which was, you know, fantastic. And also at the same time,
on top of everything else.
Yeah. And I was so excited. I thought, oh, I've got a year to write this. That's fine. You know, it's 9,000 words a month. You know, that's fine. I can do it.
There speaks a journalist.
No, well, you know, it was actually my agent said that to me. He said, oh, so that's 9,000. I was like, what? Okay, that sounds doable because I had no idea what it meant. So I got the book deal, and also then, yes, the marriage just like fell apart, you know, overnight. And I had to then just kind of, I don't know, grapple with everything, like just scrambling around, just like, it's a bit like you're on a ship and it's sinking and you're quickly just trying to grab all your possessions or things that are important to you and try and I don't know, kind of make them stand upright so that they don't fall over. It's just weird, you know. So you go into that weird kind of fight or flight mode or whatever it is, I don't even know, just crisis mode, and you try to work things through. But You know, I did have this period where I really didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how I was going to continue getting up at 3 o'clock and leaving the house at 4 a.m. when there was a 5-year-old child in the house. It just didn't seem to me it was a soluble problem. And that really freaked me out because I am used to things being soluble.
Yeah, you can fix it somehow.
Yeah, somehow, you know. I think it's a female thing, but men can also do it. But I think, you know, women are very good at problem solving. Maybe because we've been left all the problems to solve.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Were you the family fixer as well?
Yeah, pretty much, you know, like I would know what was happening, what needed to be done and try and anticipate problems rather than just let things happen and then go, oh my God, what are we going to do now? So that was the kind of the crisis. The crisis was that. And at that point, I remember tweeting about it because not to kind of show grandstand or showcase my pain, because I actually didn't know what to do. How do I do this? Should I cut myself in half? Should I get myself a wife? Or should I leave my job? It felt like those were the only 3 options available to me. And then I got this huge kind of response back, mostly from women, but from some lovely men as well, saying, you know, this is ridiculous. You shouldn't have to, you know, do everything. And women I didn't even know, maybe women who worked at the BBC or another organisation, saying, come and live with me, I'll look after your daughter, you can share my nanny, I also have to get up at 4 o'clock, I've got an attic room.
Brilliant.
And I'm just thinking, what? That's mad.
Yeah, where's that all come from?
Quite an attractive prospect, but you know, but probably not going to work. But in the end, what had to happen was that I had to work from home. And a lot of people will be like, yeah, but everyone was working from home. But not many people were co-presenting a radio show from home, because it's quite a difficult thing to do, actually.
Yeah,
although, is it?
House.
Yeah. Well, so that was the more difficult bit. So they're very much like, you can't co-present because when do you know when to stop and start, and how will you not talk over each other? But you know what? There's so much technology that we just had like a kind of ongoing video call. So there was no delay, and I could see on my co-presenter, he would look at me, I would look at him. And someone said to me 6 months or 4 months down the line, I didn't know you were broadcasting from an ironing board in your bedroom.
Yes. Ironing boards are really useful like that. If we owned one, which we don't,
no,
I would be using it right now.
I don't own an ironing board anymore, no, because I don't believe in ironing clothes.
No, me neither.
Life is too short.
As you can tell. Yeah.
And once it had, done its job, I just sent it away to its kind of, you know, its demise. So I don't have an ironing board now, or an iron, obviously.
Just evicted it.
Yeah.
Because I'd started to make notes about, you know, taking on this big job and then getting divorced. And then I just thought, I'm not going to ask Aasmah about childcare, because nobody would ever ask a man how he manages that. But then, do men even have to think about it? Not many.
Yeah, it's very true. I was just having a conversation just now with a friend of mine about, you know, the summer holidays. And it's like, I'm already thinking, I've already got the 6 weeks mapped out, because I am thinking about that, because it impacts on me. If there's no one to look after her for 6 weeks, then what, I have to take 6 weeks off. I mean, it's, you know, so it's something that we have to co-parent and do together. But obviously it hadn't crossed his mind really. He's a bit like, but it's May, and I'm like, yeah, but we need to book stuff up, and and I just need to know, which weeks do you want to do, which weeks am I going to do? And it's that same thing really of, you know, after school clubs, you just kind of go on and you pay for them, and you kind of think, hang on a sec, I'm doing it, but I'm not even doing those days. It's not even a financial thing, but it's a mental load thing, isn't it? Where you're kind of just constantly thinking, like, she doesn't have any summer pajamas, and she doesn't have any trainer socks, so she's getting quite hot in those socks. So order them. And what about that club? And in August, this is happening, and this birthday, and I need to save the dates, and it goes on and on and on. Yeah. And I only have one child. And I love that child, and I actually love organising all this stuff for her because she appreciates it so much. But it's amazing how much of this stuff just goes round in your head like a goldfish in a bowl all day. And I think Michelle Hussein once said that, I think for the Olympics or something like that, possibly Beijing, it was 3 o'clock in the morning or something, and she thought about ordering nappies to her house. And at that point, I think she said, no, I'm not going to do that because I'm not there. It's not up to me. And many of these, you know, men as they are, maybe if we stood back a bit, they would actually do it. But it's all messed up, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and
it really
you don't want
is.
to cast aspersions on all men, because some of them are amazing, just the stuff they do. And I just watch them and I'm just like, oh wow. And then people say, well, you shouldn't say they're amazing because they're just doing their job. And I'm like, but I still think it's an amazing, wonderful thing to do when I see a proper equal partnership. I do think it's amazing because it's very rare.
Yeah,
you know,
it really
50-50 is is rare. It's really, and no matter how much people shout and rant and say that's not fair, it's true. It's just true. It'll take a long time for it to change,
Yeah, it will. I mean, I've said this 1,000 times on this podcast, but it feels like over lockdown it went backwards. But I saw in the book you referred to your daughter once or twice as your unexpected daughter.
Yeah, so she was unexpected because I was 43, I think, when I had her. And I never really wanted to have kids. And I never really wanted to get married. So what does that say about me? I mean, it can say, well, exactly. It can say, it can say good things. It can say bad things. Some people might say, well, that's why your marriage ended. But no, I really, really, invested in that marriage. And when it fell apart, it just wasn't anything to do with me. I wish it had been in a way because you could own it more, but it was just, external circumstances that meant it couldn't continue. But I was never really never had that maternal thing. And so many of my friends were like, I'm not into that either. I think we were very much of the generation. I was born in 1971, very much the generation, the kind of Madonna generation, where it was just like, be your own boss, have a job, wear a suit, have a briefcase, go to work, and just, and own the day. That was always instilled in me by my mum and dad, by, society, by, other female role models that I saw. So I wasn't that bothered, and I genuinely didn't have that kind of feeling about, I had nephews. My sister had children when she was 30, so I had nephews when I would have been like 25, I think, so that was amazing. It was so good. I think I may have got the math slightly wrong, but I was quite young. And then what happened was, when I was 40, I went to a party with my husband, and we took this guy along with us, and I didn't know the guy. He seemed nice enough. And I think he just had a bit too much to drink, and he was talking to me because he didn't really know anyone there. And he was just saying, but I just don't understand, you're such a nice couple. Why don't you have any children? And I said, well, we're just really happy the way we are. We go on holidays and we just have a lovely, lovely life. He goes and travels a lot. I'm traveling quite a bit, domestically because I'm doing, TV reporting, and I was freelancing at that point, I think. And I think I just left 5 Live and I was just doing lots of bits and pieces, and I was just loving it. And I just thought that would be the end of it. There was something about it. I think maybe, I don't even know if he had a lot of children or what, or he was brought up that way, but he just kept on like turning the screw on me. And then at one point,
on you, not on your husband.
No. I think my husband was just kind of like sheepishly standing by. Maybe he was a bit embarrassed by it all because he'd brought him, I don't know. But at one point he just kind of went up to me. I think he was very old fashioned. He said, that is your vocation, you're a woman. And okay, you might not want to have children, but you are so lucky you have that gift, and da-da-da. And I was just thinking, okay, I don't really agree with you, and I don't really want to.
You just smile.
Yeah, I was trying my best to be diplomatic, and then he said, I just think it's unnatural for women not to have children. And I was just saying, well, I said, there's a lot of women who are unnatural then.
Yeah, I'm really unnatural.
It's just like, God, whatever makes you happy,
But why did he get off just saying this to you?
It gets worse, Sam. He went up to me and he put his hand in front of my face, so horizontal, and then ticked it along round my face. Tick,
oh my
tick,
God.
Tick, 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 tick.
How did you not hit him?
At that point, I was just like, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to go over and talk to someone over there because that's just like not cool.
So rude.
Yeah. So I wasn't upset in terms of, oh, maybe he's right, maybe I should have a child. I was just upset because I remember thinking, he's like a dog with a bone. It's like, just leave it. But I suppose some people just have a thing in their head about something. Anyway, so fast forward a couple of years, and a couple of women, including 2 relatives of mine who were about my age, both unexpectedly got pregnant. And then a friend of mine got pregnant. She's like 5 years older than me. And she was just like, I don't know what, oh my God, I can't believe this. I'm pregnant. And I'm like, I think she was 45 or something like that. And I was just like, and at that point, I just felt, you've all left me here standing on my own on the dance floor.
Yeah.
And I just slightly panicked. And my mum had been saying to me, it's fine, you don't want to have kids, fine, but make sure you're sure, because once it's gone and you might regret it.
So your certainty went at that point.
Yeah, it wobbled a bit. I think it wouldn't have wobbled if those 3 women, and good for them, they love having their kids and everything, but it was a shock to me because it all happened within like 6 months.
Oh, so you hadn't been trying for ages or anything, you decided to, and
yeah, exactly.
Here she came.
Yeah.
Wow.
And oh my God, it was hard.
Yeah.
It was so hard. She had reflux. I had a C-section, and then she had reflux. She didn't sleep for 7 months because she couldn't, because she was constantly being sick. I was breastfeeding her 14 times a day, which is really good for, not good for your mental health, but really good for weight loss if that's what you want to do after you've had a baby, because obviously you've gained extra weight. So 14 times a day, I used to write it down because I was like, is it really 40? Yes, it really is 14 times a day, because she was constantly hungry.
Oh, God.
So it's very isolating having a young child.
So kind of in your mid-40s.
Yeah. And you feel very isolated as well, because there's not many people your age who are having children.
No, well, you were fully geriatric, Mum.
Yeah. Oh, well, officially, yes. Geriatric. Yes.
I'm just thinking about like where I was at with my body and gynecology and all of that at that age. The idea of having a baby as well. Whoa.
I know. The whole thing was mind-blowing, really. And I'm glad I did it, because I really do try to be true to myself. Like, I think that's one of the reasons perhaps why I didn't always do well socially when I was younger, because I just always wanted to be true to myself, and I couldn't pretend to be something else. I found that really difficult, whereas other people, friends, family, would pretend to be something just to get through, just to survive. And I don't disrespect that.
It's a skill.
Yeah, it's a skill. It is a skill.
I haven't got it either.
But I just don't have it. And I've always been slightly awkward, like as in, oh, she's a bit awkward, a bit difficult. But it's because I'd never want to follow the crowd. And again, that makes me sound like, hey, I'm such a hipster. I'm so not. I shop at John Lewis. I am the most unhipster
Nothing wrong
person
with John
ever.
Lewis.
I love John Lewis. I love it. I can spend 5 hours in John Lewis. It meets all my needs, you know?
Yeah.
So when I say that I don't follow the crowd, I suppose maybe I do because I go to John Lewis. But if everyone's going one way, I will try and look to see what else is happening over there, you know, because I have a fear of that, actually. It's like, well, really? And I don't know whether that's just to do with childhood and having some isolated moments where you were told that you were different and you need to stand back and you're not as good as us, and you know, all that stuff that happened in the 70s. It was routine, really. Maybe it comes from that. I don't know.
I was going to say, do you think it's leaning into, horrible phrase, sorry, like almost embracing that, well, you tell me I'm different, you treat me like I'm different, and all that hideousness that you went through at school, particularly secondary school. Do you think it's maybe a product of that, going, well,
I'll be different. Yeah, possibly. Yeah, it's very possible.
I was really struck when I read the book how, and you do see this quite a lot, but it was really marked with you, the kind of little Aasmah, the kind of outgoing, extrovert, attention-seeking, and in your words, not mine.
Yeah, totally.
Little girl, troublemaker. She sounds great. Where did she go when you became a teenager? It's like she vanished.
Yeah, so I think that probably does happen to a lot of women. I can't speak for men because I am not a man. It may happen to men that they go through a change, you know, when they become teenagers, because it's quite common, I think. But I think a lot of girls just become more aware of what society expects of them. You know, that you need to be quiet, take up less space, be pretty. We're talking about the 70s and the 80s here, so you know, things might be better now. You know, it's difficult for me. Yeah, it's difficult for me to gauge, really. I think they are. You know, all these t-shirts that say you can do whatever you want and girls are I don't actually buy into any of that stuff, because it's false. It's false expectations, really, because my daughter thinks she can do anything, and I'm like, I haven't said to her, but I'm not sure that's true, actually. But you know, anyway. So I think there's all those expectations, and perhaps mine were double the normal expectation because I was just being made to feel different every day. So you just become quieter and quieter and quieter, and all of a sudden no one can hear you, and that's how you disappear, I suppose, you know. You feel like a monster, you feel like a freak. And so you don't want to draw attention to yourself. You sit in the corner quietly and you hope no one will notice you, because when people do notice you, their eyes would settle on you and it'd be like, oh, hello, you're a bit different. Where are you from? And I'm like, where am I from? And I would give them your address, and they'd be like, where are you originally from? And you're thinking, I don't know what that means. I mean, it's like it's become a cliche where you're originally from, but what they basically wanted to know is, why are you brown?
Yeah.
Can you just tell us? And I would probably respected that more and been able to answer that more easily as an 8-year-old. If someone had just said, why are you brown? My parents are brown. Why are your parents brown? They lived in Pakistan and then they came over here, rather than saying, who are you? Why are you? You know? You speak to anyone my age who grew up in the UK at that time, and I think it was a genuine curiosity. I don't think it was, I'm asking because I think you're inferior. I think it was genuine curiosity, and once some people were satisfied of the answer, they were happy just to get on with you and rub along, but obviously others weren't. And it was more really the adults that were less happy because they were, reading whatever they were reading in the paper. They were listening to, Powell or, whatever it might have been at the time, and just saw us as lesser people. I mean, they really did. But there were a lot of people who didn't. But obviously it's the people that did that you really remember because they made you feel bad about yourself.
It's like that terrible story. Well, one of many terrible stories. But it's not a book full of terrible stories, I must say. But the really sad story about, is it Janet and Julie?
Oh, yeah.
Or Juliet and Jane.
Yeah,
Janet, I can't remember.
No, they're all pseudonyms anyway, so I lose track of them.
Two little girls on your street.
Two little girls on my street, yeah. So they were just like, great fun, and they moved in. It was a new estate, basically, and the house was empty for a while, and they moved in. I was like, oh, cool, 2 girls are my age, oh, amazing. Their mum and dad were really friendly and really smiley and very glamorous, and the dad was, I think I had a bit of a crush on the dad. He was just like so, so handsome.
Catalogue man.
Yeah, exactly, yes. V-neck sweaters. And they used to come to my parties and everything. And it's very difficult because there's this thing called, I can't remember what the word is, but it's kind of like authentic remembering. There's a specific word. It's a concept when you're memoir writing about how much you really genuinely remember about something and how much perhaps have you ascribed to something that maybe didn't happen. But I don't remember ever seeing the inside of their house. I never got to the bottom of it, but other people went into the house, but I didn't. And it wasn't like they said, no, you can't come in. They were always just kind of like bundling the girls out so that I could go and play with them. And I just remember standing on that doorstep so often and just being so frustrated, thinking, well, I want to get in.
Yeah, the more you weren't allowed in, the more you wanted to get in.
Exactly. But it was never said that you can't come in. It was just always like, oh, no, they can't come out today because they're washing their hair. Or literally, that used to be a big thing, washing your hair in the 70s and 80s. Yeah. But someone said they're washing their hair. They actually were washing their hair. With some kind of like apple scented shampoo. So there were like small things, that you tried to explain away as a child, and you would just think, you didn't think it could be because of that. But some people welcomed us into their homes and everything was fine, but other parents were just a bit dubious. They didn't quite know what to do with us, and I suppose maybe that's understandable.
I think you're being generous.
But it was like 1978 or something like that,
Yeah, no, I mean, I went to a secondary school that sounded very similar to yours, enormous, like 1,500 kids, 300 kids a year. There was one black girl in my year, and in the entire school, a black guy and a guy who was half Pakistani, out of 1,500 children.
Amazing. Yeah.
Mind you, a lot of parts of the country are still.
Yeah. I'm always surprised though when I see that, and then I think, well, you live in London, you live in a London bubble, and also I live in East London currently, where it's like, it's hugely mixed. But it does always surprise me. I tell you what really surprises me when I go to Glasgow now, and I just find myself staring at everyone who's not white.
Yeah.
Obviously not in a bad way, but I'm kind of like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. If I was growing up now, things would be so different because you wouldn't stand out so much. And that did have a lot to do with why I ended up in London, because I just knew I could disappear there, and I wanted to disappear. I wanted no one to look at me. I didn't want to be remarkable in any way. I just wanted to just live my life and be at peace, and I have done. A lot of people say, oh, why did you go to London? You should have stayed in Glasgow. And I'm like, well, I just wanted that next part of my life to be different. It'd be different now though. If I lived in Glasgow now, I know it would be a completely different experience to what it was 40 years ago. Of course it would be. But at the time I remember thinking, I just want to be amongst people who look a bit like me.
What point did you start to get comfortable with your visibility? What point did Aasmah come back?
I mean, so I went to university in Bristol, and obviously you're on your own and you can reinvent yourself in a way. People don't really know the stuff that went on before, and like my mum and dad. Most people, when they go to university, when they're 18 or whatever, their mum and dad take them there, like they drive them there or they go on the train with them. My mum and dad literally just put me on a train with a suitcase and a ghetto blaster, as we used to call them back then, a little stereo. All the other English kids, because mostly English kids, they'd all been driven there by their mum and dad, and they all were fully furnished, probably from John Lewis, with nice things, and I just had bare walls and a suitcase and my music system. And I suppose my parents were just kind of like, they were busy. They had a business and they had my little brother to worry about as well.
Yeah.
It was impossible to do anything with my poor little brother, you know. It was just really, really difficult. So in answer to your question, I think probably it started at university because you could just start from zero. And then when I left university, I ended up weirdly working for STV as a graduate trainee because I didn't want to do the law. I found it really boring. So I got my degree and then I was like, what am I going to do now? And I ended up as a graduate trainee at STV. And I don't know why this happened. Maybe they were being very forward thinking. I don't know. Within 4 months, they put me on screen. And I was 21 years old and I was terrified. Maybe 21, maybe 22, really young. This was 1993. There was already actually an Asian newsreader who will be very well known to Scottish listeners, Shireen Nanjiani. She'd already been there for a good maybe 5 to 10 years. So then there was me as well. And then at one point I remember we presented the main evening news together. So I started doing that and I found it weird. This is, you know, obviously there was a point when I couldn't go into a shop. I didn't want to speak. I didn't want anyone to look at me. And I didn't want to do it. And I said no twice. And then someone said to me, you can't really say no because that's just like, you know, naff and won't be looked upon very kindly.
Yeah, you
so
won't be able to further your career.
A little bit, I suppose there was that kind of feeling. So I just said yes, and then I did it. And I think that it helped me a bit. But then, of course, what happened was I'd be walking down the street and everyone would be like pointing at me, not in a bad way, but they'd be like, oh, you're that woman off the telly and that. And I didn't.
More so.
Yeah, so I didn't enjoy that because I am a really private person and I don't know, maybe I do have a huge ego, who knows. They were not pointing at me and saying, you smell, you're disgusting, you're brown, where are you from? They're pointing at me for a different reason. And that kind of felt okay.
Yeah.
Weirdly. So I think maybe around about that time, when I went to London, I got to London about 1999. And to be honest with you, I just loved it. You know, I was working at the BBC in London locally and everyone was in their 20s, everyone was single. We just went out every night. And I made an amazing group of friends who I'm still friends with today. You know, they came to the book launch and, you know, it's just, I think that was the kind of peak years, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it took a while.
I noticed you tweeted.
Oh, no.
Yes. I thought I had found you when I was 16, then again at 29, but I couldn't hold on to you. In fact, I ended up waiting all my life. You're nearly here and I cannot wait to hold you. I'll never let you go again. Tell me about those times you found and lost you.
I can't even remember like the times, but I suppose they coincide with in the book when I got taken out of the horrible school and went to a slightly nicer school and then found something I was good at, which was studying, because that's completely in my control. You know, no one can affect that in any way. And in the first school, people who were not white, by the horrible people, were seen as kind of smelly. We were always like smelly, smell of curry and all the rest of it. When I went to the better school, the nice school, and it was a nice school because people didn't try and hit you, there was this feeling from some teachers that you were a bit stupid, that you might not be able to speak English, that you might be educationally subnormal. And that's why they put me in an extra English class. And I was just like, no, I don't think I need this. It's fine. So I wanted to prove to them that actually this was not true, you know, that actually we can be clever. I think that's now a stereotype that I don't think exists anymore, but it did back then. It's a bit like, you know, Asian players can't play football. It's like, well, yes, they can, you know. So that probably is the first time, you know, when I suddenly became good at something and felt good about myself. And, you know, my teachers were, once they worked out that I could be clever, they were really respectful, actually, and they let me enter competitions and go for Oxford and, you know, all that kind of stuff.
But you had to prove that before you were allowed to.
Yeah, I definitely had to prove it, definitely, because there were prejudices, and I'm not immune to prejudices. I'm sure I had prejudices too about people when I was growing up. My parents had prejudices too, you know, I really think we all do. And then I think when I was 29, again, I think that's the time when I was living in London and just like really living what they now say, living my best life. You know, it's really weird because women especially talk about their 20s were this, their 30s were this, their 40s were this. And I've never really thought about it in that way, but I have to say our 20s were phenomenal. The amount of clubbing that went on, the amount of just random meeting people and like, you know, gorgeous guys and like snogs and, you know, honest, seriously, it was the best. My 20s were my best. And I constantly think back to my 20s and I think they were amazing. My 30s were Definitely a decade of two halves. You know, the first half I was single and kind of like not sure, wasn't quite sure what I was doing, where my place was. The latter half I was married. My 40s were horrendous. They were shit. They were absolutely shit. And I don't know why. I always thought my 40s would be good. But after I had my amazing daughter, every single thing went downhill. People stopped employing me. People stopped calling me up and saying, can you go and do this? Can you go and do that? Definitely my relationship changed, which I think is very common. I just started to feel less in control of things. I started to feel anxious. And I suddenly started feeling myself just tipping down a slope into, I didn't know what it was, but it was everything. So it's having a baby, it's trying to, you know, do your job, it's your body's changing, your relationship is deteriorating, and you just don't feel in control of anything at all. And you kind of think, hang on a sec, I thought in my 40s I was supposed to be like, you know, solvent, secure, you know, all this kind of stuff, but it was terrible. And the last year of my 40s was the worst. When I was 49, that's when I got separated and all the rest of it. I mean, we shouldn't look at it in those ways, should we? But I suppose it's helpful. Some people say to me, don't look at it that way. Look at it as this is the second half of your life. You're not going to make any of those mistakes again because they've all been made. And I do find myself changing already. I do find myself someone asked me to do something, I just say, I'm not going to be able to do that. That's not going to happen. That's too much stress for me. And also with the whole perimenopause thing, I'm on HRT now, which has really helped. I just have to be so kind of aware of how I feel on a particular day or a particular month. Like, I'm feeling terrible right now. Like, I took the wrong HRT recently. I obviously just had too much going on and I took the wrong dosage of tablets.
Oh, God.
And it sent me over the edge because my periods came back and I was just like, what is going on? This is horrendous. And I felt awful. I felt like I was in the abyss. I phoned up the doctor and she was like, so you're doing this and 2 of these? And I was like, yeah, well, hang on a minute. 2? Oh, I've been taking 1. She said, all right, how long for? I said, probably 2 months. She says, how long have you had periods? 2 months. She said, that'll be what it is.
That'll be why.
And it's just like, how mad is that, you know? So
God,
it's
I
amazing.
don't want my periods back.
No, I know.
God,
who would want that back? No, not at all.
God.
So I'm just hoping that there's a lot going on now. You know, it's like we're moving house and I've got this book out. You know, it's like I'm hoping, I don't have another book idea in me right now, but I'm hoping that this is what I actually do because it's what I've always wanted to do.
Really?
But from day one, you know, my mum said to me, she said, I always thought you would write a book, you know, before you were 30 because it was your thing. And obviously life gets in the way.
Yeah.
And also
go down a different path.
Totally. And how much do you have to write about when you're 30 about your own life? I don't know, you know, but, you know, she's really happy that I finally did it and that she's still around to see it as well. And in fact, she's on the front cover. She quite likes that too.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you actually, because it's interwoven your childhood and teenage years into your mother's teenage and coming to Glasgow.
Yeah.
Did your mum write her bits or did you interview it out of her?
I interviewed it out of her. So I think it was kind of the tail end of lockdown. So it was on the phone, a long conversations. And my mum's hearing's not amazing, so you can imagine what that was like. So just like 2 notebooks worth of notes from my mum about things that I thought would be interesting, and then I would check with her, is there anything else? And then she'd say, oh, what about this? And you know, there's things in the book that I did not know about my mum until she casually mentioned them maybe 6 months before I got the idea for the book, because I was just going to write my memoir, and then I thought, hang on a second, Mum, your story is mad.
And
what on earth is going on?
Beautiful. I saw Ian Rankin say on Twitter that it could have been fiction.
I know.
And I know exactly what he meant.
But that was such a compliment.
Yeah,
that was such
absolutely,
a compliment.
because it's such a beautifully told story. It's a story ultimately of 3 women, but really it's, and I can't spoil.
Yeah.
I love the end.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad.
How was it? Well, you've just said that you did discover stuff about your mum. Did it change your relationship?
I don't know, because there was so much stuff happening at the same time. So, I mean, why does everything happen at the same time? It's just annoying. So when my marriage fell apart, I had some difficulties with my immediate family, not because they disapproved. They were 100% behind me. They had no issue with that. But what happened was that my immediate family, they think I'm a tough cookie. They think I can withstand anything and she'll be fine. She's a tough one. She is, she gets up at 3 o'clock. She does 5 jobs at once. She'll be fine. And so what they did was they over-ascribed competence to me. And the reason I know this is because my therapist has told me this, because I had to get a therapist. Because I thought my head was going to explode at one point. She's right, I suppose, because they thought, we don't need to go through the emotional stuff with her because she's fine.
She's got it down.
She's hard as nails, she is. She's really tough. And actually, I'm not. Well, I am, but that stuff, it was such a punch in the stomach. And there was other stuff that was going on too, like my daughter was kind of like misbehaving at school and I was getting called in there. And then I went to my family for some comfort and they were just very clinical. Like they weren't horrible because, I love my family, especially my mum and my dad. But they were very clinical about it. They were just like, right, so let's be practical. What are you going to do about your house? What are you going to do what are you going to do? Let's work out how we can help you. That I don't know. I was just looking at them thinking, but this terrible thing has happened. Is anyone going to talk to me about how I feel about it or not? And what happened was that there was just a massive falling out. And I didn't speak to some members of my family for 2 years. And I didn't speak to I didn't speak to my mum for, I think it was maybe a couple of months. And I'm someone who, I love my mum so much that I speak to her, if not every week, then twice a week. Although I've noticed as I've got older, we do talk less. I don't know why that is, but anyway. So it was really difficult. So that's changed our relationship. And slowly we came back together. My mum was just like, I'm really sorry. I should have spoken to you about the emotional stuff, but I didn't want to upset you. I didn't want you to cry. And I was kind of like, I understand that, but what you did just made me feel like no one cared,
Was it maybe that she didn't want to see you cry as opposed to she didn't want to make you cry?
Yeah, probably that, because she's not since I was a teenager, I think, has she seen me cry. Because I think I used up all my tears when I was a teenager. I'm not really a crier.
Is she a crier?
No, she's not a crier. She's tough. She's so tough, my mum. And when she does cry, it's like the world has fallen apart. Like there's a bit in the book where her relative dies and she cries. And I was just so upset to see my mum cry. Because when you're 6 years old, whatever, I cried once in front of my daughter and she was just like, she was in tears as well. And the whole thing just went on and on and on. And I think it's a pattern that repeats itself. But in answer to your question about my mum, I think our relationship has really changed. And it's a real shame, actually, because this book should have cemented that relationship. And I love my mum, but there's definitely a little bit more distance between us. And that's so sad. It's so sad because I don't know how much longer my mum's going to be around. She's about approximately 80 years old. No one knows how old my mum or my dad is because at that age, no one knows. They don't have birth certificates and stuff like that, so there's a rough idea. My mum's about 80 and I should be closer to her, and I try very hard, but something definitely shifted and it's terrible. Actually, I feel bad about that because I should be able to get over it, but I just think it was just such a horrible time that I just wished people had been there for me. And a lot of people were not there for me, and I'm not friends with them anymore. And a lot of people who I hardly knew laid down everything for me. And it's just bizarre.
It's funny, isn't it?
It's so weird.
How that happens. How sometimes, whether it's family or friends, when there's a big crisis, it's not the people you expect who come through.
No.
Ever.
No, I know. It's just really weird. Like neighbours were more help than some friends, and some friends I think some female friends who were perhaps going through similar things found it just too difficult to contemplate. I think that's what it was, and that's fine. I understand that. You don't have to be a textbook friend. It's fine, but it's hard for me to kind of come back to someone if they were just absent for 2 years. It's like, well, where were you? Well, I just found it really difficult. Well, so did I.
Yeah, it's like when I just needed someone to have a coffee with.
Yeah, exactly.
A friend of mine, when she left her husband, she said the same thing, and it made them look at their own marriages and either decide they couldn't settle or realise they were going to settle, and they couldn't be with her not settling.
Those
totally. Things couldn't coexist for them. But that doesn't make it any better when you just desperately need your friends around you.
Yeah, totally. I have a couple of friends who are have been over the years in a similar situation, and they both stayed, they both settled. And I just think, well, that's fine. You've got to do what you've got to do. You got to look at your circumstances, your finances, your mental health, your support network, the age of your children, what job you do. You have to look at all that, and you have to make your own decision, and you have to live with it. And that's absolutely fine. God, we're all going to have a different response. I would have definitely made the same decision anyway, but I was lucky in that I was in a well-paid job. If it happened a few years before, when I was working at the BBC and I was only working 1 day a week, it would have been a financial struggle, but I still would have done it, because you've got to be true to yourself.
That's the thing, isn't it, though? It's like, you can say you were lucky because you were well paid, and some women are trapped in bad relationships or just relationships by their finances. But like you said, you would have done it anyway.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, that was an absolute no-brainer. It's such a shame, really, because, I didn't really, like I said, I didn't really want to get married. And then when I did find someone that I thought was, the right person, was someone that I could marry, that I did love, it's just a shame. It seems like such an inadequate thing to say, but it is really, because you find someone quite late on in life and you kind of think, okay, I've waited a long time. I've really weighed this up, but I suppose that is life. You take a chance on whoever you marry, man or woman.
Are you back out there?
Yeah. Well, no, I'm not. No. So first of all, I haven't, I don't have the time because of my mad job, so I'm in bed at 8:30.
That's
I don't
true,
think
you're
many
not.
people would think that. I'd be like, yeah, I'm going out a date with you, but I need to be home by 8:00. Yeah. Obviously there's the weekend, but then I'm with my daughter. So I don't really have any time right now. I think the idea of living with someone fills me with absolute horror. I love living on my own, and I love just having my own space and coming home and, all the rest of it. But I think in a way I am a bit of a kind of quite an old-fashioned romantic in that I love the idea of dates, but old-fashioned dates. So not dates by apps. No one looking at their phone over dinner, basically, kind of long candles, a nice walk home, maybe by a river. I'm really, really old-fashioned that way, in a kind of nice Italian restaurant. So one day it would be lovely to go out, even if it's just a solitary date or solitary dates. It would be nice, because I love the idea of that. And I think a lot of it also goes back to, when I was a teenager and being told that, like, no one would want to marry you, and, you're brown and you smell and you're ugly, and what man would want you, and all that kind of thing. And I think a lot of that,
those horrible kids.
True, but it happened to a lot of girls, actually. Like, you're fat, you're this, you're that, what man, it's just how, children can be, and I think still are. Obviously now they just do it digitally. I know, which must be a million times worse, but I think I still always just hankered after, I can't wait to be grown up. I can't wait to go on dates and hold hands with a man and all that kind of stuff, like you do when you're a teenager. And I've done all that stuff, and it didn't work out. And you kind of just think, well, it would still be nice, to do that again, someplace, sometime. Who knows when, It might be next year, it might be in 10 years. I just don't know at this point. I'm just trying to get my footing right now. But, I'm getting there.
Before I ask you the questions I always ask, I want to ask you about the book title. A Pebble in the Throat.
Yeah.
Tell me where that comes from.
So again, so much of this goes back to the divorce. When I wrote a column about the fact that I was getting divorced, I had to, because I had a weekly column in the Times in Scotland at that point, and I basically could not get past it. I couldn't write about anything because I had an absolute block, because I had to get it out there. I didn't really want to talk about a divorce, but I thought, just get it out and then move on. So that column was about when you find the obstruction, the pebble in the throat in your marriage, when you suddenly understand why your marriage isn't working, you remove the pebble and you move on with life. And that came from, as explained in the book, a kind of little parable type thing that my mum used to tell me about this little bird that couldn't sing, and then it befriended another bird who looked inside its mouth and saw a pebble and pecked it out, and then the bird could sing like all its siblings. So that's what the kind of the origin of it. But a pebble in the throat, I suppose, also it refers to my grandmother, who, found it difficult to progress with her life because of her circumstances. And it also refers to the fact that I couldn't speak for a while. I lost my voice because I was so underconfident. And so I think the pebble in the throat, in terms of characters, refers to me and my grandmother, not really my mum so much, although she was the one that told me the story about this little bird, and it's always stuck in my mind. And a few people on Twitter said to me when they saw the title, they were like, oh, that column that you wrote.
Yeah, it's a
and
lovely
they
column.
kind of remembered it, you know. But it's really weird reading that, because I must post it again so people can understand what it was about. But it's funny when you read something that's so of the moment. The other reason I wanted to write it, publicly or privately, was that I like to revisit stuff. I've got a real thing for nostalgia. I love looking back and trying to remember how I felt at that time. And that's why when I see a book, for example, that I read when I was 15, because I don't have those books anymore because they all got lost. But if I see in a bookshop a book that I read when I was 15, I want to pick it up and I want to look at the back and and then I'm just transported. And then you just think, oh, but I'm in a better place now. And it's a weird thing about trying to send this message back in time, you know, to kind of say, it's going to be all right, it's going to be fine, it feels terrible right now, but my God, you've got, 70 years ahead of you to live, and it's going to be so interesting, because life is ultimately interesting. It's up and it's down, and that's life.
And the Pebble in the Throat shifted now?
It's definitely shifted, because I found out what the obstruction was, and removed it, and then made some decisions, and yes, it's definitely gone. I just hope that no other pebbles are attempted to be placed anywhere near my throat, figuratively, in the future, but I don't think I would let that happen again.
Right. What's your emotional age?
Oh my goodness. God, that's so interesting. My emotional age, my current emotional age. So I've always felt emotionally immature. I've always felt that I am 10 years younger than I am. And I don't mean looking, I mean emotionally. I just feel like I get to 60 and I'm like, oh, now I understand when I was 50. So I would say my emotional age right now must be 41. Very specifically, 10 years before.
Give us a book recommendation. So it can be just something great you read recently, or it could be one of those books that you don't have anymore from when you were a kid. Anything.
I read a book recently. I love reading memoirs, and I love reading about family dynamics, and it's called Consumed, and it's by Arif Akbar.
Yeah, it's a lovely book.
It's such a good book. A lot of it is lost on me because I'm not very artsy, but I appreciate that she is. And that was just a whole new story. This idea of there being two sisters, and one is the favourite and one isn't. And the one that isn't is basically kind of harassed almost into mental illness. I mean, I just thought that was what a horrendous tale, but also then to have to live with that as the favourite sibling. I just thought that was an amazing book, and I gave that to my mum to read as well, and she was the same. She finds it difficult to read books that are difficult. She wants books that are happy and happily ever after. Books that maybe are a bit close to home, I think she finds them quite difficult. But I always pass on, these books, especially if they're about the Asian experience, to my mum. But that book was just so clever and so different to anything I'd ever read before, because that particular dynamic, it's not that you're saying, oh, poor me, I was the sibling that, my dad didn't like. It's like, no, you were the sibling that your dad did like. And how must that feel, especially when that sibling has passed away? It's just like, I thought it was phenomenal. I thought absolutely phenomenal book.
Did you have that kind of favourites, mum's favourite, dad's favourite thing in your family?
Oh, it's really difficult, because I would say that when I was, my dad, when I was growing up, it says in the book that we had an amazing relationship because, he loved taking photos and I loved posing because I was an attention seeker. So all the Super 8 films, home movies, most of them are of me, which is mad, and it's just me basically showing off. I'm on my bicycle, I'm on my tricycle, I'm standing on one leg, I'm doing this. Look at me, daddy, am I amazing? So we had a fantastic relationship when I was younger. I mean, it got a bit more difficult, obviously, when I was a teenager. But then my dad had an amazing relationship with all four of us. He was a great 70s dad, he was really good. He was kind of as present as 70s dads were, but he was just so much fun, and he was, we always kind of got what we wanted off him, which was fantastic. But my mum, I kind of moved on to my mum a bit later on in life, and she used to always say to me, and I should whisper this, she used to always say to me, I would say to her, but Mum, am I your favourite? She would say, yes, but don't tell anyone. And this was very much, I think, after she came back from Pakistan and had to help me with things like, going into a shop, and she really wanted to bring me back out of myself. And I think we developed a really strong relationship because of that. Maybe it was based on guilt. I don't know what. She shouldn't have been guilty though, because she had 4 children, one of whom, had huge challenges in a time when people didn't understand that
It's
stuff.
your little brother, isn't it?
Exactly.
We've referred to a couple of times.
Yeah. So he, so back then they didn't know what it was, but I think it was when he was 21, they officially said it was Asperger's. But he
So
also
he's
had
autistic.
learning difficulties as well on top of that. But he's like a really sharp cookie, like he's really clever about some certain things, but he's not, his kind of like, reading and writing are like childlike. And he's not able to live independently. So he's been through a life of kind of institutions and special schools and living at home. And now he lives in a kind of supported accommodation. And he goes and sees my mum and dad once a week. But I think he's going to be 50 this year. And that's just mad, because he will just always be 10 years old,
Yeah,
He hasn't moved on from that. And it's mad. It's not his fault. He still says the same things. Which he just has his obsessions. And
He's still obsessed with cars.
Obsessed with cars, obsessed with London versus Glasgow weather, obsessed with...
Lots of people are obsessed with
Yeah, I know. There's about 2 or 3 things that he's obsessed by. Pakistan's better than this, better than that. This person, that person's better. He used to be obsessed by particular newsreaders. He doesn't really watch TV anymore. But, it's just those small kind of manias. But he will just always be a 10-year-old to me, even though he's going to be 50 this year, which is mind-blowing,
That's crazy.
It really
isn't it?
is, yeah.
What advice would you give younger women?
Oh my goodness.
Knowing full well that they won't take it.
Yeah.
Of course.
My instinctual advice is don't let people make you small. And then there's my more realistic advice, which is you probably won't be able to do it all, as in you won't be able to do everything. Girls can do anything, girls can do everything. Maybe in 40 years that'll be true, but it's not true right now. It's just not true. So yeah, don't try and do everything. Don't try and do everything, because you can't. Just pick the things that make you happy and just do them. And I don't know, be kind to yourself. Instead of being kind, be kind to everyone. You know how it says on a lot of t-shirts for girls.
Yeah.
Be a nice girl, be kind, be lovely, be kind to people. It's not be kind to yourself. I would say be kind to yourself, be forgiving, and don't judge yourself so harshly. And also this moment that you're in right now is, it won't always be like this.
Would you have paid any attention to that, do you think?
I think if someone had said to me that it's going to be better, I would have, but there was no one to tell me that, because my mum had such a different experience to me growing up. She didn't understand what the problem was, because she'd had an amazing, secure school life where she'd been head girl and, top of everything. And I'd just been just kicked to pieces, basically, like a lot of us had. We didn't have any role models, basically, I suppose is what I'm saying. We didn't have anyone older and Asian who could say to us, "Oh, you're going to have an amazing life," maybe because they hadn't had that life yet. So I think if someone had said that to me, I think I would have been incredibly hopeful and optimistic. But no one did.
Who's your old bird role model now?
It's really hard, because a lot of the kind of feminists who are like maybe in their 70s and 80s now, I find them quite disappointing, because they say things like, but it's not as bad as when I was young. And it's like, but that doesn't matter,
It's not relevant.
And I suppose I'm kind of saying that a bit as well. I'm saying, well, racism's not as bad as when I was younger. So
But
maybe
you're
I'm
not-
guilty of that too.
You're not saying their experience doesn't count, though,
Yeah,
which I think is the
that's
difference,
true.
isn't it?
I would say, I think that my role model has always been, from the age of about 13 to now, it's Madonna. It's Madonna. And Madonna's done a lot of questionable things, like she had that weird hunting phase, and when she was trying to be like an English lady and
when
all
she
the
was
rest
trying
of
to be
it.
English gentry.
Yeah, exactly. That was all a bit weird. But honestly, when I was young, when I was 13, 14, she was the one that just kept, I think I just believed that she was showing me a world in which women could stick 2 fingers up to the establishment and say, you think I'm too much. Well, I will be too much. And every time you tell me not to be something, I will be that just to annoy you. And I kind of really respect that. Obviously, it was more relevant, perhaps, and it had more impact in 1985 than it would today. Now it feels very confused. Everyone's feminism overlaps and it's kind of difficult and all the rest of it. But, she is still someone who's refusing to lie down and die, I suppose, in a way. And people still don't like that. And,
No,
and I just think it's amazing.
Refusing to go quietly, isn't
Yeah,
she? And
exactly.
in a way that people find acceptable, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
It's like the whole fuss about her face. It's like what people object to, I think, most about that is not that she does it, it's that they can see that she does it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. We don't want to see the strings, basically. You know, we don't want to look at an old face, but, you know, if we're going to look at a young face, it can't be too young, because then we know that you've cheated. It's just ridiculous.
What's your superpower?
My superpower, getting through it, just getting through it. Just get to the end of the day and just have a little celebration that, you know, today I did 14 or 15 really difficult things, and I did them on my own, and well done me. You know, sometimes I want to actually list it. You know, I'll be like, so today I've done a full day's work, and then I went to the gym and lifted weights because it's important for women of my, you know, age. And then we did the garden, and then I sold my house, and I bought a house today, and I went 16 miles away, and I looked at another school for my daughter, and then I came back, and then I did the washing, and then we did the garden, and then I did this, and I did that, and it just goes on and on and on, and it's like a list of 14 or 15 things, and they're not small things, but you do them all on your own, and they're not all physical either. Some of them are mental, and you find your brain being pushed in all these different directions, and I don't know, maybe it's no big deal, maybe people just get on with it and do it, but I just think my superpower is just getting to the end of the day and thinking, yes, I did it, oh my god, I did it, nothing fell apart, and I did it, and you know, and I did it for myself actually, and my daughter. I didn't do it for anyone else, so because you shouldn't be doing stuff for other people, they should be doing it themselves. Or helping, you know.
I think that's hell of a superpower.
Yeah.
Last one, how many fucks do you give?
I would say close to 0. Maybe half of one. I think it's a thing of midlife women that, and I used to look at midlife women and think, God, why are they not like, you know, why aren't they smiley and nice, like, you know, like I am? And now I understand why. Yeah. Because it's tiring, and if I don't like something, I'm just going to tell you now. You know, I'm just going to tell you. I'm going to tell you as politely as I can. I'm going to say, no, that's not going to work. And everyone's a bit like, oh my goodness, the air has changed. That was a bit weird. But you just have to just say, no, I don't want to do that. And I don't really care. I think I will say throughout my life, from my 20s onwards, I don't care what people think, because I think I lost control of that such a long time ago. I've never really cared what people think of me, and that's why I've never been hugely popular. You know, I don't have a massive group of like friends who all know each other. I know a lot of people individually. I've made good friends individually, and I've just never been in that kind of massive herd. And I suppose you sometimes look at that and you think, oh, that would be nice actually, but I've never been that kind of person.
We've just totally gone full circle. That's where we came in.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening. You can hear a new episode of The Shift each Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you hear, please do rate, review and follow, because it really does help other people find us. And if you'd like more of The Shift in your life, head over to theshiftwithsambaker.substack.com and sign up for weekly newsletters, podcast extras and more.